Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Growthwell Podcast, where we explore the art of balancing professional growth and personal well-being. Thank you, as always, to my friends at Market Scale for making this happen. So I'm your host, Josh Byrd, and as you may notice, if you've been watching this show, there are guitars in the background. The guitars people ask me about all the time, but I have and live a separate life as a musician and songwriter in Nashville. If you ever want to hear something that I've written, just let me know. I'm happy to share it with you. But I want to bring every once in a while somebody from that world onto the Growthwell podcast. And so this is my first time attempting to do that. I've got my friend Christian Hale. He's an incredible producer, and he's got a million things that he's produced that you've heard on TV and on films and probably on popular radio. And he's just an incredible guy. He runs his own business. He runs his production company like a business. He's a new dad. And I got to sit down with him on location in his studio in Franklin, Tennessee. And so this is just our chat. And we decided to throw microphones up in the room and call it a podcast. So I hope you really enjoy it. And without further ado, here's my conversation with Christian Hale. I have Christian Hale here with me, longtime friend, incredible musician, but more than that, a businessman and a family man. And just tell our listeners a little bit about what you do as a businessman in the music industry.
For sure. I would say the simplest and biggest, broadest way to talk about it is I'm a music producer and songwriter. With that, though, there's a few different outlets and things that means from a business point of view. Some of what I do less and less these days is for hire work for clients, production clients, record labels, artists, both as a producer and a mix engineer. I also write songs for artists. From the business angle, there is obviously like a royalty and asset building component to that. More and more these days, I'm doing a lot of work in the TV film licensing world. So making songs for movies, ads, promos, trailers. My music's been licensed by a bunch of big brands, like Nike, Google, Netflix, Hulu, Tennessee Titans, whole bunch more. So do quite a bit of that. YouTube, duh. And more and more these days, actually creating some content myself, teaching music production and a lot about the music business side of things on YouTube. And in addition to all that, as of 2 months ago, I'm now a dad.
Congrats.
Man, it's a
cute kid, I gotta say.
You know, the first few hours he came out, we weren't so convinced he was cute. And then about hour 6, because honestly, like for all the parents out there, he wasn't that cute when he came out.
Look, the honest truth is newborns kind of look like an alien.
It's so like, you know that, but so here's my theory on that. Everybody, like, you see their picture of their beautiful baby in the hospital. That picture is not taken 2 minutes after they come out.
No, it's
that
not.
Picture is taken like 8 hours to 24 hours after they come out. So
That's
when
right.
our kid came out, my wife and I, no joke, it was not this like crazy emotional thing. We both kind of looked at each other like, what just happened? And then when we got some alone time, like 20, 30 minutes in, my wife was like, Christian, I don't think he's cute yet. And then the blinders came off and he got cute, and now we're enamored by it.
You're obsessed.
We're living in his world for sure.
Well, that's why I wanted to have you on today, because, you know, people don't think of producers and songwriters as entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Especially people who are not in it and
For
don't
sure.
understand. But there is so much business to manage, and all of the things you just talked about. There's deadlines. There's people asking you, hey, where's my mix? Hey, where's this?
For sure.
When are we going to get that? You know, and I think so that you don't go crazy, you and I've talked about this a lot. You have to be grounded in your why. You know, what drives you beyond just making a cool song that the Tennessee Titans use as they run out of the tunnel, which is awesome, by the way.
Yeah, it's
but
cool.
Like, what drives you?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at the end of the day, I am driven by freedom and flexibility. Like,
Amen.
I'm more motivated. You know, it's like, it's such a rich dad poor dad thing, but like the rich don't work for money. Like, as especially in this life post kid now, like more than ever, I'm less motivated to work for money, trade my time for dollars. And I'm motivated by freedom, the ability to, hey, go bust my butt and work hard and crank on a song if I want to, but not because I have to.
Right.
Or by the same token, have the freedom to take a day off and go hang with my wife and kid, or take a week or two off and hang with my wife and kid. I mean, coming out of this kid thing, I didn't work at all aside from small emails, but I was not in the studio at all for a month. And it's because I've structured my business to have freedom. So I feel like my why is freedom is just the most overarching way to put it, that then ultimately gives me the flexibility to, have more like sub whys. Like, if freedom is the overarching thing, like, well, then like what I'm more motivated by in that moment in time can kind of take hold. Maybe freedom allows me to be a better husband or be a better dad, or spend time grinding on the business if that's what I need to do at that time.
Yeah, we find that, for our family, there are seasons, right?
Totally.
And I think balance is the key, but being rooted in that why. And I think that with every decision that you make, there's a risk versus reward component, right? So what is your decision-making process when you decide, is now the time to hang with the fam, or I need to get up there and grind and get after it to crank out this work?
Yeah.
What is your way of evaluating that?
For sure. And to your point of there's seasons for everything, I feel like, my wife and I have been married 6.5, coming up on 7 years now. And I feel like early on in our marriage, a lot of my goal was like, and so that was earlier on in my business too,
right?
Like, just get things established. And so here's a little bit of the behind the scenes of the music industry. For those of you that don't know, we could spend an hour plus on this alone. But for me as a producer and songwriter, there is kind of like short-term money, there's mid-term money, and there's long-term money. And so for me, the short-term money is my client work, my coaching. I get paid a check to do a service, and, I hand over the thing and then we move on. The midterm money is maybe a little bit more of the writing for TV and film licensing. It's not always a guaranteed thing, but you write songs, they get placed and licensed by major brands, you get paid. Then there's even longer term royalties, as you know, Josh, as a songwriter, that
they trickle in, but they add up.
They trickle in and they add up. And, whether it be from streaming or songwriting or side artist projects that then over the course of years compound and build and build and build, you can wake up one day and see that you've actually built this nice little thing that, it kind of pays you a full-time living on autopilot. So I say all that to say, like, earlier on in my career, I was really intentional about, sure, like, you got to pay the bills and you got to pay the bills. And like, definitely did the bill paying stuff that allows you to put in the time, build the reps, get good at what you do. But from early on, my wife and I were always motivated by it. How can we like try to think down the road? How can we try to think about when we might have a kid someday?
Right.
And then here we are. And so with balancing that out, I am really glad now that I'm at the point where I was more midterm and long-term minded to then, like, honestly, to be totally transparent at this point in time, I can say yes and no to whatever I want to.
Right.
And so then what that allows me to do is pretty much just say yes and no to the things I want to do with the people I want to do it with, or make business decisions based on just only the midterm and long-term money.
Yeah.
And not like, oh crap, like I got to go do this thing. So like, I'm going to go do something that pays well. And there's lots of opportunities in music to do things that pay well in the short term. But then I
drive yourself crazy.
It will.
Hamster wheel.
It will. And I have so many friends that they're such talented creatives that they get in that hamster wheel of they didn't think long term. And they're just playing that like, all right, got to make a quick buck. And they have the skills to do it, but then they never break out of that cycle. So, when you ask like, how do you weigh out some of your decisions? I feel like for me, it was going back a few years and implementing things to pay off in the long term and saying no to some short term money, some quick cash to build the thing over the long term. And then what that hopefully sets you up for is years and decades of freedom that then you can just start feeding more into that.
Yeah. It's funny you say that. Two quotes that, I just love is, hey, no is a complete sentence.
Totally.
And the other one, it's come up now 3 days in a row with 3 different people I've met with, but somebody said, and I'll go up and look this up, but the quote is, if it's not a hell yes, it's a no.
Yeah.
And you've got to be all in because you are trading time with family
For
to
sure.
do that thing.
100%.
And we all have to work. We all do our thing, but it has to be intentional. I think that's really what it comes down to for me, is like being intentional about your time and your investments in your work so that you can do the things and live the life that you want to.
For sure. Yeah, and it's so easy to just fill up a whole bunch of your time just saying yes to things that are maybe actually good opportunities. But I think this is so true in every business. My context is the music business, and it can be such a scarcity. You don't know when the next hit's going to come. You don't know when the next thing is going to happen. So like, oh my gosh, I got to go say yes to every single thing. And then before you know it, your time is filled up with things that, again, like on paper might be good. There might not be anything inherently wrong with them, but it might not be necessarily what you say you prioritize the most. And man, to your point of like just being okay with saying no if you're not 100% for it in that moment in time too. I think that's everything.
Yeah. One of the books I was reading says the measure of wealth is the amount of time you have available to do whatever you want. It's not the number in your bank account, right? And so that leads us to kind of the next thing that I wanted to explore is maintaining balance, right? And there are seasons, but how do you, in general, maintain balance? Do you have daily rituals that you do? Do you make plans? Do you follow schedules? Do you just have everything in your brain? What do you do to maintain balance between your professional growth and your personal well-being?
Yeah, I think a little bit of my daily ritual right now is let my 8-week-old just tell me what the day is going to be within reason.
Yes, been there twice.
Yeah. How you do that twice? To all the parents out there, how in the world do you
just do it?
You just do. And I say all that to say, actually, parenthood is going amazingly well. But I joke like a little bit of like daily time for daily rituals and those things I might have. Well, hopefully have more of in future seasons.
You would.
Had in past seasons. Right now, any excess time is going to just going to that kid a little bit. But, I think big picture for me, like, and I kind of started talking about it in what we were just talking about a minute ago with yeses and nos. But I've really tried to get in this practice of looking at my month and looking at my calendar. And before I say yes or no to anything, just making a list I tend to do it month by month. And this has helped me a lot. So let's say in a month, I have 3 main things I want to prioritize. So what I'll go ahead and do then is figure out, all right, this thing is going to take me this many days. This thing is going to take me that many days. I want to go spend X amount of time with my wife and kid, and I'm going to go schedule all that stuff first. And this sounds so simple to go schedule everything you say you want to prioritize first, but I lived my life for years, and I'm not perfect at this. I still do it sometimes. I lived my life for years the other way around, where I said I want to prioritize X, Y, and Z, but then I was mindlessly filling up my time with a whole bunch of other stuff. And again, some of that was good stuff. It was things that like they looked like good opportunities, but the problem was they didn't align with my priorities. So the things that I said I was prioritizing was getting the scraps in my time, and then everything else was getting my most creative time, my freshest energy. And then my priorities were getting the back burner of my time, my attention when I was tired. So I feel like for me, that's the biggest thing I've been doing lately. And it's kind of been a game changer for me.
It takes so much discipline. I can tell you, I do the same. I do it on a week by week basis because I don't know what my month.
Yeah.
I can't even comprehend planning a whole month.
For sure.
I do it on a week by week basis. Every Monday, I have a check-in and plan the week, make sure that everything is put together. I actually use an app called Sunsama that I think is brilliant. But,
Noted, I said.
Yes, noted. Absolutely. But, I do it on a week by week basis and then a daily basis, right? I get up and I look at what is most important, but it takes a whole lot of discipline to start doing that. Yeah. But I find that it's a lot like working out in that it's a muscle. And once you've exercised that muscle, like I'm kind of lost without doing that in the morning. Yeah. Right. I need that and I crave it. And it's made me a lot more productive and a lot more able to say yes to the things that actually matter. All right. So here's the thing that I find so many podcasts don't talk about.
And it's, we all have our strategies for balance, and we all have our work hard, and we all have our play hard. But life is life.
Yeah.
And it knocks you off balance. It's not a matter of if, it's when.
For sure.
And so what do you do to kind of bring yourself back to center? If you find yourself way out of balance and you're working too much, or you're stressed, or you're feeling the pressure of the business that you've built, and the business that you build can be a wicked mistress sometimes. And
sure.
So how do you have strategies in place, A, to help you realize that you're out of balance? And if you're out of balance, then what do you do to get back in balance?
Yeah, I almost want to flip this back on you and be like, after I answer, tell me what you do, because like this,
I'll tell you.
This is real. I feel really fortunate that I'm not just saying this because I'm on a few cameras right now, but my relationship with my wife is honestly, it's great. And, marriage is for 7 years now, been amazing, before kids, after the kid, like it's been great. So having that partner that knows you so well, that knows what life looks like for me as an individual and us as a family when things are going well, but also knows my tendencies, like knows what I'm thinking before, like 10 steps before I make the move, that kind of relationship. She's so good in a gracious way of being like, if things start to get a little out of balance, like not when I'm necessarily in the heat of the battle, but like when I've taken one step back, being like, hey, like this and this and that's going on, isn't it? And it's usually something I already know.
Yeah.
But for me, having that wife who she also is an owner of 2 different businesses. So like she gets the entrepreneurial thing. Like she understands firsthand the stresses and the challenges and the good and the bad and all of it. But having that partner that you can go to and just dialogue with, like for me, that's honestly such a good first step and something I don't take for granted, and so I feel like if I wasn't married, like if I were a single guy, I would try to go find those relationships elsewhere. Like try to find close friends that like you can just keep each other honest with. And I have those friends too, but nothing's quite like the spouse relationship. So honestly, starting there and just having a real talk of like, okay, like here's what has been happening. Usually when those conversations come up, there's like a few week period of, we just got to keep our head down and get through the thing.
Absolutely.
Like we're in it. So let's get through it. But when we then do get through it, let's talk about what happened and how we can make sure that never happens again.
And postmortem on the project. That's huge.
And the time to do that for me usually is not in the heat of the battle or 75% of the way through. Like honestly, when things start to go out of balance a little bit.
Yeah.
For me, it's usually like, all right, we just got to get through and keep our head down. So anytime that's happened for both me or my wife, like we've been really good over the years about sitting down and being like, okay. And usually after we've had that conversation, I can start to do some self-assessing of like, yeah, I know what happened. But then when you sit down and actually have that conversation of like, yeah, this happened. And here were the 3 things that I said yes to that I maybe should have said no to, that compounded with these 3 other facets of life all led to this thing. Like you can usually start to strategize and see patterns if you're bouncing it off of somebody. And then it's just kind of a matter of like, well, like no more, for me, an example might be like no more songwriting sessions on this day a week, or you're only going to do this many of this type of thing per month and no more. You do well when you do this at this time of day, but if you try to push that at the end of the week after this and this and that, like that's when things go out of cycle. And so a lot of times I can trace back some of those things to really simple yeses and nos with the help of a spouse in my case. And, that's a lot of what we do that's worked pretty well.
Yeah. For me, it's my wife too.
Yeah.
She is more of a mirror in that she's like, okay,
yeah,
you need to, you're a little stressed. You need to go for a run, exercise is the other thing.
Yeah.
I can really, if I don't exercise for a few days in a row, I actually feel it mentally more than physically, right?
I feel you.
And she's like, hey, you probably need to take a break and go for a run. Occasionally, if it's really bad, she'll say, when's the last time you saw your therapist?
Yeah.
And we have an amazing relationship, but she's good at those little reminders that, hey, it seems like you're out of balance. I also do I have this thing called a 5-year journal that I swear by. And every page has a date on the top, and it's got 5 spaces, one for each year.
Yeah.
And I'm now in my second year of going through it. And so you write basically 4 sentences a day, and I can look back and see just how far I've come.
Yeah.
Right. And that's really good check-in.
Sure.
It's like, whoa, like I had an idea on today last year that about this little bitty business idea that was just starting to have a spark in my life.
Yeah.
And I didn't ultimately chase that, but the elements that I researched for that became the Growthwell podcast.
That's awesome.
1 year later,
And here we are.
and
You got the worst guest of the whole podcast 1 year after the germ of the idea.
I know, isn't that awesome?
You did it all.
So,
You should have got
but,
the heavy hitters.
now we've got Growthwell, and I was able to look back and see that, holy moly, look how far I've come. And I think, I'm really terrible at knowing who said really profound things, but, it might be Tony Robbins, but he says, we greatly overestimate what we can do in a day and underestimate what we can do in a year.
100%.
And so looking back to this date in time 1 year ago,
For sure.
has been really huge for me to kind of keep me in check.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So I'm a big fan of that. So, I think that as entrepreneurs, as business people, we really have to be intentional, but sometimes we have to get down to it and just get the work done. And so this is my favorite question.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell you I was going to ask you this.
Here we go.
What is the song that you put on when it is time to get going that just gets you into it?
All right. This is, you as a music maker are going to understand this, but everyone else might be like, really? The music guy's about to say this? Truthfully, music is work for me. So when I'm not in here in this studio, I very, very listen to music.
I believe that.
And so I should try to come up with something though. But truthfully, I've listened to more music than ever since my son's been born because he's obsessed with music.
Yeah.
And 120 BPM, club dance music he lights up to, and he cries to things he doesn't like. So we live in the dance club when we listen to music with him. So I feel like it's been that lately. But it's so funny. But I listen to silence in the car usually. Silence or podcasts.
Silence is golden.
I hear music through my speakers for however many hours a day, and so then I get away from it. But
besides the Growthwell podcast, what podcast do you like?
I'm very into a guy named Myron Golden at the minute. He has a YouTube channel as well as a podcast, and he is an amazingly brilliant businessman. I'm sure a lot of your audience knows Myron.
Yeah, we'll put the link to Myron's stuff in the comments.
Yeah, Myron, he does a lot of teaching on sales, on value. He does some teaching on YouTube. He blends a little bit of a faith-based element into it, but in a way that I've never heard anyone talk about that before. Things like, here's how I modeled my business after King Solomon's business model.
Whoa.
And
that's cool.
And then we'll talk about scriptures in conjunction with his business. And then here's how I implemented that to do this coaching thing and product. And it's, I'm pretty big on the Myron train right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm going to check that out. So last question is, we all have our ways of paying it forward. And I think paying it forward gets, kind of overdone because it can be done in very small ways.
Sure.
But everyone I meet and everyone that I know that I'm going to have on this podcast, I already know pays it forward in some way. So I'm not catching anybody off guard. But paying it forward to me is a way that we can further our impact.
Yeah.
Outside of our businesses, outside of our family. So when you think of paying it forward, what do you think about, and do you have any, things you try to do, or, do you just keep your antennas up for opportunity?
Yeah, for sure. I feel like a lot of it for me starts with just a humility mindset.
Yeah.
the thing about the music business is like pretty much everybody starts at the bottom, and the most successful songwriters, producers, artists, whatever. Like Taylor Swift was a nobody at the bottom at one point in time. And so I think as your career grows and as your business grows and you start to have more success, like just not believing the hype about yourself and starting to think like, you know what, like I'm pretty good at this. Like that guy over there, this kid just starting out, like, I don't need to.
But we were all that kid.
We all are that kid. Yeah. And there's always somebody to compare up to, and there's always somebody to compare down to. So I bring up the humility thing just because I feel like if I have that mindset of remembering that feeling of what it was like to get started, when it comes to then giving back, I feel like I get messages from people, pretty often. Hey, can you answer some questions about breaking music? Can you do this? Can you do that? And, I do some coaching. So it's not like I can always, answer everything within reason, but I feel like little things, just giving career advice to the person that was me 10 years ago that yanked out and never feeling too cool or too big for my britches to like do those kinds of things. I feel like that's part of it. I have knowledge and skill that I've accumulated from years of experience. So not just holding on to that, being willing to share. Also in my music context, like, this about me, Josh, like if you called me right now or you were working on a mix and you're like, what is your chain of plugins for this, and that? Like, I'll tell you every setting. Yeah. Like, so just not keeping secrets too. Yeah. And being willing to share things you figured out with people. Part of that too is this YouTube channel I've started pretty recently. I feel like a lot of that for me, was driven to give back, wanting to put the things that I've learned over the years of doing this out there on a broader platform, to help people. And, I think just with the humility piece too, I think that giving back thing can just be more of anyone you come in contact with, just being the same person, being consistent. And I think about rooms I've been in younger on in my songwriting and producing career, and somebody thinks they're a hot shot, and they're always, and then you're the young kid in there, and you feel all up in your head and whatever. And like, man, I never want to make somebody feel that way. Like this week alone, I've worked with very well established people that all your listeners would know. And I've also worked with like an independent artist who is a nobody. And I think I can honestly say I treated both of them the exact same way.
Yeah. And, well, I know that about you.
Yeah.
I mean, absolutely.
And so I feel like that is giving back in a sense of, you know what, I'm going to bring the same effort to that independent artist who is like just trying to figure it out. And music is honestly a glorified hobby for him. I'm going to put the same level of care and attention and knowledge and conversation into that as I am, the big shot. So
yeah, absolutely. And, I love what you're doing with your YouTube channel because, same with this channel, right? We can't answer every question that everybody asks.
True.
However, we can use those questions to guide these discussions so that we're actually answering them, just not maybe on a one-on-one basis.
For sure.
But this is a way, I think about measuring life in terms of impact, not in terms of bank account. And so we can use these platforms that, like YouTube and Instagram and whatever, to actually have a bigger impact and make the world a better place. They get such a bad rap because there's a lot of bad that can come from social media, but I believe there's a ton of good.
Yeah, it's just a tool. Like anything, it's a tool that can be used for good and for impact, and can also be used negatively. So
yeah, absolutely.
So I'm not going to blame the tool for negative impact. It's maybe the person using the tool, if it's positive or negative.
Well, I mean, a tool is just a tool. The person is, and the heart behind it is everything.
Yeah, for sure.
So, in closing, is there anything you're really excited about that you're working on, or in the future of your YouTube channel? Anything coming up that we should, be aware of? This question with my guest goes all over the place. And that's why I love to end with it, because it's just so fun, because everybody's excited about something. Yeah. So what are you excited about, man?
I'm on the business side. I'm excited about, I'm excited about the future of the YouTube channel. I am, as of the time we're recording this, a few months into releasing at least weekly content, at least long form video per week, and then some shorts derived from that. And we were talking about this right before we started filming. Before I make a judgment on like what I'm going to continue doing with the future of the YouTube channel, I'm going to stay in that rhythm for a year at least. Like,
Yeah.
the first time I'm going to make any kind of judgment on the success or failure, whatever that looks like, is a year in, because I feel like you have to at least get to some point further down the road before you can decide like yes or no, I'm going to keep doing this or pivot, whatever. So I have some videos in the pipeline. I'm very excited about that. Some of them are done, and it's just a matter of letting the weeks come by and putting them out. So I'm excited about the future and the growth of that.
It's fun starting a new thing.
It is, yeah.
We're creatives at heart. It's just like it's like, oh wait, I can do this thing too. Okay, let's do it.
Totally. And it's a, doing this podcast now, like, it's a full on thing. It's hard to halfway start something.
No, you can't. We're all in.
Yeah. And I feel like you have to be. And then, like it's a thing. Like, good quality things in the world don't just show up and happen.
They don't just happen. They take intentionality.
Tons of intention. There's so much more effort behind the scenes, I feel like, on any successful or good thing than you can even understand. So excited about the future of that. I have a project called Outskirts that you know about. It's kind of
link to that in the comments too. It's awesome. You want pump up?
That's pump up.
You want pump up music? Go check out the Outskirts.
I make pump up music for other people. I listen to it on loop, so then I don't have to go listen to it when I.
You know what? I didn't even realize we hadn't told the listeners.
What?
You are one of the co-writers of the Growthwell theme song.
With the other member of Outskirts, actually.
With the other members of Outskirts.
You were how we met originally.
Yeah.
So Josh started the band Outskirts.
So that little ditty that you just heard and you will hear here in a minute, Christian produced it and helped write it with me and a guy named Brandon Ray.
If you liked it, I produced it. If you hated it, Josh did it.
That's right. That's right.
But no, Outskirts, I mean, kind of getting on just real quick on the business side of the music thing. That's a case of like a little machine that like, we are not artists in the true sense. We are not touring whatsoever. Nope. We do not want to tour. But so Outskirts basically started as, Brandon and I started writing some songs for TV film licensing. And we did some kind of high pump up sports songs, and we got a couple placements. But I think some of our first ones were NFL. I think Dude Perfect was an early one, some Fox Sports stuff, like all very sports centric. And we were like, well, we need a name for this band that we started that was just a collection of songs, and we called it Outskirts. Then we put the songs out to the world, and then we started having some success and like actual fans on streaming. And then some of our songs did really well on social media. Our song Let's Do This has been kind of all over Instagram Reels and TikTok. And like, we literally never intended to start a band. Like, this was the ultimate side project of side project of side project. And so we kind of joke and say we've been the world's worst artists. Like, everything I would advise an artist going full bore at it to do, like, we kind of haven't done it all. But almost in spite of that, our numbers on the back end have been really good. And the amazing thing about being an independent artist is streaming revenue. Like, you keep all of that.
Yeah, it's perpetual.
And in the modern music world, like, we as songwriters don't necessarily make a lot of money unless your song is played on radio or licensed for TV and film. We don't make a ton of money as songwriters on streaming, but streaming, if you are the song recording holder, which if you're an artist signed a record label is the record label, you're making pretty good money from streaming.
Yeah.
But when you own the entity and own all the streaming revenue on the sound recording side, like, it can be a pretty good day. So Brandon and I with Outskirts have almost had this wake up moment lately of like, hang on a minute, like, we've done everything wrong, and almost despite us have like actual we got multiple emails last week alone saying like, you are our favorite band. When are you going to do more? And it's like, wait, what? Like, people are actual fans of this. And so we've had, like I said, we've had this wake up moment of, wait, this is a thing almost in spite of us. So what would happen if we actually like gave it an effort? So
no record.
Actually did a little bit of Grant Cardone 10X. We did a 10X sort of meeting lately, and really the point of that is I came to Brandon, the other half of Outskirts, and I said, hey, Brandon, like, here's a question that got my mind thinking lately. I'm going to hire you as a consultant to Outskirts. And, we've kind of been kicking around, maybe we should release some music, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. Right. I said, hey, I'm hiring you as the consultant for Outskirts. Your job is to 10x our revenue, and your job is to 10x our Spotify streams.
Right.
What are you going to do?
What are you going to do?
And the point of that is, the Cardone people out there, know that the point of that isn't necessarily to 10x your revenue per se, or 10x your streams, but it's about tricking your mind to think bigger.
Yeah.
The action steps you're going to take, if you're actually going to go forward with 10xing whatever you're doing, are a lot different than, hey, it'd be cool to double or whatever, get a few more this and that. And we had this conversation lately that was all centered around this. Hey, you know what our goal is? We're going to go 10x our revenue, and we're going to go 10x our streams.
Yeah.
The decisions we started making for strategy almost made themselves.
Yeah.
It went all of a sudden from, we're going to release this many songs this often, to like, hang on a minute. No, like that's out the window. We're doing this, and that. So we're putting a lot of things together behind the scenes for that right now that really came as a result of that 10x conversation.
Yeah.
And really is just a result of making what we're doing a lot more intentional.
Yeah. Not to be the negative Nancy here, but I love those 10x conversations.
Yeah.
But then I love coupling it with black hat thinking. And black hat thinking is, okay, if we didn't 10x in the time frame that we set,
sure,
what went wrong? And so you're starting to visualize, oh, well, this went wrong, or this went wrong, or this went wrong.
Sure.
And you actually map out the dangers and the risks to get you to that 10x.
Yeah.
So you're more aware. And so it's not negative thinking as much as thinking about the dark side of it, the black hat thinking.
Sure.
And then once you've identified those things, you can be on the lookout for them
100%.
and make sure. So for instance, maybe you say, well, we got behind on this project.
Right.
Well, you'll make sure that if that stands in between you and 10x, that you're not going to get behind.
Yeah, 100%. So, man, I mean, I feel like that's, and I've kind of started applying that thinking to lots of what I'm doing. Like, again, not that the goal is to go 10x everything. Like I said at the beginning, I value freedom, I value flexibility, but I feel like applying that thinking just to think bigger, to then all of a sudden it's like, wait, well, if you do half of 10x, maybe you actually 5x,
That's still a great out.
Yeah, for sure. So for me, so much about the music industry is there's things you can't control. Like you can't control so many results. All I can control is who I work with and bringing the best to every single day.
Yeah.
But how successful songs are or aren't, like, after a certain point, almost has virtually nothing to do with the quality of the song. Like there's a bar you have to be at and above, but like, some of the songs that have made me a good amount of money are throwaways. And it's like, wait, that worked. But then I have this thing that's been sitting in a catalog for how long that like, I feel like is objectively maybe one of the best things I've ever done. And it hasn't even come out yet. So like in that world of I can't control results that I have to live in a day in and day out. I try not to get too fixated always on like, man, I have to go hit this number, hit that number. It's more just about the rhythms of being consistent, working consistently hard with intention over time, using some of that 10x thinking just to think bigger about the actions you take, but then sort of just being okay with letting the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. And I think just knowing you, one other thing I would add that maybe you give yourself credit for and you just hadn't mentioned, but much like an investment strategy, you do diversify your work. So, if you were only writing songs, you have no control over that.
For sure.
You've got a kid to pay for.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Totally.
But if you're also doing other things, whether it's coaching or your YouTube channel or a number of other things that you're into that have that, you talked about short-term revenue, midterm revenue, long-term revenue. And if you're being intentional with the diversification strategy of what you work on, you can sort of even out the bumps.
100%.
Right?
And then, like I said at the beginning, like some of that long-term money starts to become like pretty good and stable over time. And then it can just become all about like, what do I want to do and not want to do? But I mean, I feel like if you're not in the music industry, people might not realize like a song at its core is nothing more than an asset.
Yeah.
Like when we go write a song, which we're going to do after this,
Yeah,
it may or may not
make another asset.
We're going to make an asset, and like that is a little asset. It's like a little piece of real estate you put on a plot of land or a stock from the stock market. Like that thing can appreciate, it can depreciate, it can be sold someday, it can be leveraged again.
Yeah,
and like that's the music business at its core.
Right.
It is all about asset. It's all about
asset management.
It's asset management for sure. That's a great way to put it. And so the fact that like we get to do this creative thing that then also has this very business side, like I love that marriage.
Yeah. And I think so often, so many people look at their careers as very like straight, or that they should be very straightforward. And I do this one thing. I'm an investment banker, or I'm a producer, or I'm only a songwriter. And I think that that's like, there's the hustle culture that I'm actually very adamantly against.
I am too.
I'm very for hustling. Don't get me wrong. But I think that you can do it smartly by doing a lot of things.
For sure.
And, one of my mantras is I am all these things. I am a songwriter and a creative, but I'm a business person. I have the Growthwell podcast. I have a coaching business.
Yeah.
I have my fractional chief marketing officer business where I help startups scale and grow. I have all these things and they keep me creatively fed, but they also diversify
for sure
income
100%.
and help me have the balance between professional and personal.
Yeah, dude. No, I mean, and to me, it's like you're the same brain behind all of that. So
yeah.
I could see like the person who makes the argument of like, well, you're losing focus and attention if you're not only focusing on X, Y, and Z. And there is a fine line with that kind of thing.
Oh, sometimes.
But like, it's kind of like me with the YouTube thing. Like it wasn't that much work for me to like one of the series I have coming in the pipeline is upgrading a demo to a fully finished, recording for an artist on this label project I did. Well, okay, the label already paid me and hired me to go do the production. So for me, it was just a matter of turning on my camera and screen record.
Right.
And having an editor kind of do some of the heavy lifting of that. And all of a sudden I have a 3-part super in-depth YouTube series that I would have killed to have seen when I was starting my career. And so, it seems like, oh, well, like I went and did this whole extra additional YouTube thing, but it was really just kind of repackaging what I was literally already getting paid to work on. So I feel like you've done a really good job of that with this podcast and some of the spin-off things you've done of like, it might seem like 10 different things, but really it's just your brain doing the same thing, just slightly repackaged here.
Yeah. And it's about expanding impact.
Totally.
Right? And that's what it's all about. So man, thank you so much for this conversation.
Thanks for having me.
This has been amazing.
Thank you, man.
Christian Hale, everybody.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you again to Market Scale for making this podcast happen. I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Christian. As you can see, we share a lot of history. We share a lot of commonality. And it doesn't really matter what kind of entrepreneur you are. If you are in business, if you're in music, if you're starting your own idea, it's only important that you go out there and pursue growth well. See you next time.